Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins, and I'm here with my really good friend Susan Patton, aka the Princeton Mom. How you doing today, Susan?
I'm doing terrific, boys. And you?
I'm doing really well. And you and I decided that we wanted to do something that I think can be insightful, fun, maybe even a little bit tense, but definitely interesting. And we decided we're going to do something called This Week in Black and White, where you and I are going to have conversations that are honest and they're not going to be politically correct, but they're going to be correct. And,
Right.
and hopefully fearless conversations as well about important issues that revolve around race. And I think that and it was your idea. I want people to know that. And I thought it was a great idea. I thought about it and I said, not many people really have these honest conversations about race. And, I like Susan and we don't agree on a lot of stuff. And Susan, she's not a wimp. She tells you what she thinks. And I don't think I'm a wimp. And so this is going to be fun. What do you
I think
think?
it's going to be a lot of. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I love the fact that we bar no holds. We're right at each other. You say what you think. I say what I think. Sometimes we agree. Often we don't. But I think because we're respectful of each other, we like each other. We could talk about anything. And as I sort of thought during the week about things that we could talk about, not a day went by that something didn't happen in the news, something that was current that I thought, a black perspective might be different than a white perspective on this, and maybe there's something to be said. Maybe there's a way of approaching the news here that would be meaningful, a way of approaching current events that is informative, that's insightful, and that at the end of the day, maybe provides a bridge for better racial understanding, a better way of understanding how the other thinks.
I certainly agree with you. I mean, I think that that the communication is necessary, but then really the honest communication is what you need, right? Because we have enough of the stiff dialogue. I mean, we just had another Martin Luther King holiday that for some people it's substantive, and for some people it's just a bunch of fluff, a bunch of meaningless chit chat, and pretending
Right.
that these big problems that you actually have don't really exist, right? Thinking that if we hold hands and sing "We Shall Overcome," everything's going to be okay, and I don't believe that's the case. And it's really interesting. One of the people that I always loved so much, Malcolm X, always said that he would rather talk to a white person, even if he were a member of the Klan. He would rather talk to an honest white person than someone that's going to tell him a lie. And I think I'm the same way. You and I, one of the things you and I were talking about was the Oscars. Recently, there was a lot of there's a lot of controversy. A lot of people were upset because African Americans were kind of shut out of the Oscars. The film Selma, which I guess is critically acclaimed, wasn't recognized on any level. And
Stop, stop. No, no, no. Selma was nominated for Best Picture. So don't even go down that path. Selma was nominated for Best Picture. So stop your whining. You know, I'm sorry. I don't know a single person that's in the movie Selma with the exception of Oprah Winfrey. And as I understand, she has a relatively small part. So that there were no actors nominated? All right, well, so there were no black actors nominated. Well, so what? The picture was nominated, so don't say there was no recognition. There was recognition. Last year, 12 Years a Slave won. Last year, Lupita Nyong'o won. Last year was a pretty big year for blacks in the Oscars. That this year isn't? It isn't. So what? So what? That's not necessarily a manifestation of a racist academy. That's simply because maybe
well no, but let me say this. Look, I don't care a whole lot about what the Oscars do. To be honest with you, I don't think that it means nearly as much as people think it means. It doesn't mean much to me. But there is a history, there is a track record of the Oscars, freezing out African Americans. There have been great films in the past, like for example, the film Malcolm X. We talk about Malcolm. Denzel Washington and the film got no recognition when that film came out. Though, of course, they were happy to recognize Driving Miss Daisy. So there is kind of a perception I think people have that when African Americans portray roles that whites are comfortable with, that we're going to be recognized, we're going to be applauded. But when we portray roles that we feel are more distinguished, that are more worthy of who we truly are, that doesn't get recognized as readily. For example, the best actor and best actress awards went to Halle Berry and Denzel Washington, and in Monsters Ball and Training Day. And a lot of black people felt like, wait a minute, Denzel Washington has played all these amazing roles, all these distinguished roles, all these roles we can be proud of in the past, but you recognize him when he plays this thug in Training Day. And I think a lot of people felt the same way about Halle Berry as well.
But not because he was a thug, because it was a really, really good performance.
But Denzel has two or three really good performances every year. He's the same actor all the time, right?
I understand that, but in some roles he's better than in other roles, as any actor would be. And go back a second. You're saying that the Academy recognizes only when black actors are performing in roles that they're comfortable with, or that a white audience would be comfortable with. 12 Years a Slave was one of the most upsetting films I've seen in a long time. I've described it, and I've heard it being described by others as well, as like slave porn. It was a very difficult movie to watch, yet it was recognized as Best Picture. And not only that, but last year we had Lee Daniels' The Butler, which also received all kinds of critical acclaim.
Right, but do you see the theme though? I think that there are people who feel that, why do we have to play butlers and maids and slaves to be recognized? What's going on there that's making people feel comfortable seeing black people in that role of, the strong silent butler who kind of passively allows you to kind of mistreat him over decades, and his dignity and his honor comes from the fact that he's endured so much abuse,
right,
without speaking up or standing up on his own behalf. I mean, I think that there's kind of a resentment there for people that feel that those roles are more acceptable than other roles that are a little more empowered.
I don't know that they're more acceptable, but they're more dramatic. They're more dramatic, and I think it's as simple as that. I mean, the reason that those roles are recognized as being as powerful as they are is because it depicts a time in our history that many white people have forgotten, honestly, have forgotten. I'm sure the black community is not, but the white community largely has forgotten that there was a time that this is how black people were viewed. Certainly the history of slavery is not something that most white people are very familiar with or very comfortable with at all. It was a jarring These are jarring performances that maybe are recognized and awarded because they are just so powerful, so powerful. But I think for the black community to be up in arms about the lack of recognition at this year's Oscars, nope. Selma's nominated for Best Picture, and last year was the awards in their entirety were predominated by black participants, black movies, and black actors. So no, honk.
Well, I think I will say that I think the Oscars. I think that the Oscars were not designed or created to be a place where black actors and actresses are as comfortable as white actors and actresses. I don't think that I don't think it was built for us. I think that there are lots of films and actors in the black community that are known and loved, who are consistently ignored by the Academy, and really, my position is, okay, I don't care. I mean, because here's the thing. You don't see white actors and filmmakers lining up and begging for the chance to be recognized at the NAACP Image Awards, right? And so my argument.
No. But this is different. The NAACP Image Awards, that's specifically for African Americans. So I mean, clearly that.
Well, it is. It's a little more blatant. It's a little more blatant, but they're diverse, right? The NAACP. One of the things that they do is they're really big on diversity. They're really big on proving that they're not just for black people, right? So they'll have a lot of white presence there, almost like a reverse form of tokenism, really. But it is there.
You can tell me the NAACP isn't. Is all about diversity, and I'm going to tell you, no, it's not. It's about black people. It's about black people. If you know what NAACP stands for, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Come on, it's about black people, and that's perfectly fine. If there are white people that are part of that or want to participate in those efforts, well and good. It's not for white people, and everybody knows that. Go back to what you said.
But you are aware though that the NAACP wasn't founded solely by black people. I mean, there were black people that were involved, but if I'm not mistaken, and I can look this up to be precise, but a lot of the people that drove the creation of the NAACP were not black. I think that should be made clear too, right? And there are black people who feel that the NAACP does not represent them as they would like, right? But here's the thing. Here's what I want to ask you about. Let's switch from another civil rights organization, the National Action Network. You saw that Al Sharpton wanted to declare an emergency meeting over this Oscar situation. I know how I feel about it. I thought it was kind of silly, to be honest with you. What did you think?
Well, I'm trying to remember the last time Al Sharpton said or did anything that I didn't think was kind of silly. And I don't understand why the black community doesn't rise up as one and tell Al Sharpton, you have got to sit down and shut up because you are giving us a bad name. You are making all black people look bad with your foolishness, with your fear-mongering, just with your lunacy and with your idiocy. Why are black people not rising up as one and telling Reverend Al, sit down and shut up?
Well,
explain that to me.
Well, we actually did have a blogger by the name of Ashley Naples who wrote an article on culturecritic.com that people can go look up. Where basically she says exactly what you're saying. She almost writes it as like, "Dear white people, Al Sharpton does not speak for the black community." And I think that her point is that she doesn't just blame the black community, those in the black community who sort of see Sharpton as a spokesperson. She also blames some part of the white community, right? Remember when Paramount or not Paramount? Sony. Sorry, Sony had the hack, and all these ugly things came out that they'd said, in the emails. So again, Sharpton declared an emergency meeting with Sony, which I don't know what came out of that or what that means. Maybe it means hire me as a consultant, and then I'll make this go away. But
that's what it means. That's what it means. And how could we take seriously anybody that's $4 million in debt to the IRS? And he is half a criminal, if not more than half a criminal. Pay your taxes. I pay my taxes. You pay your taxes. Why is it that he's allowed to sort of walk the streets, strut the streets as he does, swagger the streets as he does, when it is clearly known that he is some $4 million behind in his tax payments? This is a disgrace. To me, that's criminal, and I don't understand how the man has any credibility.
Well, I think for the record, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Sharpton did settle some of that. So they're kind of working on that, I guess, and I mean, he's close to the president, so I'm sure that's helped raise money.
And that doesn't help anybody. That certainly doesn't help the president. The poor president. You have to. What my people would say is Rachmanis. You have to have Rachmanis on our president that he is associating with Al Sharpton. This is not good for the president. It's not good for the nation. It's not good for the mayor of New York either, by the way, that he too is hanging around with Al Sharpton. No good will come to anyone who is hitching their wagon to Al Sharpton's star.
Well, I'm not a blanket defender of Sharpton. I'm kind of mixed. I've seen him do things that I think are good, and I've seen him do things that I can't agree with. But one of the things that I know was brought up, by that person I mentioned, Ashley Naples, in the article is, she said, look, sometimes Sharpton isn't selected by black people to go speak for us. He's selected by white people. He's selected by corporations that say, oh, well, if we get Al Sharpton to endorse this or to protect us, then this will make our racial problem go away. Because remember, the Sony executives decided to reach out to him and bring him in to LA. So it's not so much. So the question becomes, it's a chicken or egg thing, right? Is he who he is because black people are propping him up, or is he who he is because white people are lifting him up? What do you think?
I think that he's profiting in both regards. He is profiting for himself first, last, and always. I don't think that he helps the cause of black people. I don't think he helps the cause of white people. I don't think he helps Sony. I don't think he does anything to heal a racial divide. I think he's a race baiter of the worst order. I think he's a tax cheat, and this is problematic. I don't like this man. boys, I don't like this man, not one bit. I don't like him, and I've known him forever. I mean, he's been a New York, staple for forever. And gosh, how I wish he would just go away, just sit down and be quiet and stop disgracing black people everywhere.
Well, I will say that I wouldn't give any one person the right or the ability to disgrace 40 million people, right? I think 40 million people can kind of speak for themselves. Just like if you were talking about the Jewish community, you can't look at Alan Dershowitz or one person and say, oh, you represent everybody in that community, right? There are some figures that are bigger than others.
You're absolutely right. I happen to love Alan Dershowitz. I think he's a smart man. I think he's a crazy smart man. I love him, actually. I've read so much of what he's written. One of the smartest things he's written recently, you and I have had the conversation about the rape hysteria on college campuses. And one of the things that Professor Dershowitz wrote, and I think is so smart, he said, we have come to the point, we have so overcorrected, we are so fearful of he said that the accusation of rape it's become so heinous that even innocence is no defense.
I think that's a very wise quote, but
right.
but and actually, isn't Dershowitz caught up right now in some sort of scandal that relates to that kind of thing?
And I think that he was gone after specifically for having made remarks like that, having supported the initiative at Harvard to quell, to put down, to quash this ridiculous hysteria of overstatement, of reckless exaggeration of rape statistics on campus. I think that he was targeted specifically. I mean, he has denied all charges. He has demonstrated that the accusations of him doing what he claims he never did, he wasn't even in that city at the time. He has documentation and travel records to show he wasn't even in the country at the time. I happen to love Alan Dershowitz, and I think he represents the Jewish community well. Whenever I see a Jewish person act badly, foolishly, stupidly, horribly, I look at Bernie Madoff and I think, "Oy, this is not good for the Jews. This is not good for the Jews." I look at Dershowitz and I think, good, I love that. I look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg and I think, fabulous. I love that a smart Jewish woman is on the Supreme Court doing the right thing. I look at Elena Kagan, smart Jewish woman from New York, went to Princeton. Could I love her more? I mean, really, could I love her more? So yeah, I think every Jewish person represents the Jewish community in the same way every black person of any celebrity, of any notoriety, well, notoriety is the wrong word, any black person who is known to a broader community, of course, you represent the black community. Every black person represents the black community because there is no one leader of the race. You are all responsible, just like I'm responsible. I represent the Jewish community, and I understand there are people who don't like what I'm saying within the Jewish community. It's okay. We don't have to agree. We don't have to agree. It's great to be an American. You could think what you want. I could think what I want.
Well, let me say this. You brought up Elena Kagan, who is a member of the Supreme Court. I'm not a fan of Elena Kagan, and let me tell you why. During 6 years as a dean at Harvard Law School, Elena Kagan hired 32 people. 30 of those people she hired were white males. One was Asian, and the other one I think was a white female. And so, to me, I have a serious problem with the fact that the first black president, even though we've never ever had a black female Supreme Court justice in over 200 years, we've had many from the Jewish community, but many, obviously quite a few white Supreme Court justices, but black women have been kind of left off that list, and I felt that it was time to nominate a black woman for the Supreme Court. It was nothing against Kagan's qualifications, but I think that her bias right there, that serious racial bias, that almost just an annihilation of any consciousness of the existence of all of the brilliant black scholars that could have taught at Harvard Law School at that time, that's a problem.
No,
that's a real problem.
No, I disagree with you. You know that my day job has been as a human resources professional. I'm an HR babe. I hire people. I work with very senior media companies, and I hire very senior people. Many of the companies I work for are publicly held companies, and they have a diversity initiative. That means they will pay me extra. They will encourage me in every possible way they can to go out and seek specifically minority candidates to fill these senior jobs. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm going to seek out the best people for the job. I am not going to do it by color. I'm not going to do it by gender. I'm going to look for the best person for the job. And I think most people, and I'm going to say I'm giving Elena Kagan, who I love because she's Jewish, from New York, from Princeton. Come on, can't love her any more than I do. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt that she hired who she felt were the best people for the job.
But do you understand how statistically improbable it is that you're going to look through 30 candidates and every single qualified candidate is going to be a white man? I mean, that's lunacy. I mean, the statistical odds of that might be 1 in 10 million or something if you were to assume. It's because the only conclusion you can come to, if you hire 30 people and every one of them is a white man, the only conclusion you can come to is that white men are so superior to everyone else that there's not a qualified black person on the planet or a qualified woman on the planet that could have taken that job. And I think when you match that with Harvard's clear historical cronyism, clear historical bias toward white males. I mean, for a couple hundred years, the school was pretty much, a white guy haven. We have to confront that culture. We can't just sort of assume that if we go into it planning to do the right thing, that everything's just going to work itself out. It doesn't work like that.
I don't know how Elena Kagan made her hiring decisions when she was at Harvard. I don't know whether it was based on applications that came into her, but I suspect that's how she makes a choice. She didn't go out and actively recruit, but rather it was known that she was looking to hire whoever at the time. Applications come in. She'll go through a stack of applications. She has staff that goes through the applications that come in. It could be that there weren't a lot of black people who applied for these jobs. It's not her job to go.
Oh yeah. No black person wants to teach at Harvard. I mean, who would want that job, right? But let's just be real though. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of highly qualified black attorneys and judges and law professors. They do apply for these jobs. But
I don't know that, and you don't know that. For all you know, they thought, the qualified black people thought, we don't want to be at Harvard. They don't like us at Harvard. We're not respected at Harvard. We're going to apply elsewhere where we're more welcome. You don't know, and I don't know. But I'm willing to give Elena Kagan the benefit of the doubt and say she hired the best people for the job based on who applied for the job. I think it's unreasonable for you to say, or anyone to say, well, she should have gone out and sought out black people. No, not her job.
I don't think, honestly, in those positions, and in my experience in academia, you don't have to go search out black people. I know tons of black professors who apply for jobs, and there's always a reason why they're not a fit. You went to the best schools, you have the best grades, you work with the best professors, you did everything you're supposed to do. And one of the lies that's consistently told to people of color, I think, is what I call the good Negro behavior protocol, where it says, if you work hard, if you do what you're supposed to do, if you behave, you're going to be rewarded. And I know people that behave in every single way, and there's still something at the end of the day that keeps them locked out of certain opportunities, which is why I push people to own their own businesses, which I think you would probably agree with as well. Building your own, creating your own, supporting your own community, right?
But when you say at the end of the day, there's always some reason why they're disqualified. Well, what are those reasons? I'm asking you, what are those reasons?
Well, I think it depends on the case. I mean, but I can say that
right. It depends on the case. And again, I'm an HR babe. I hire people for a living. This is what I do. And when people say to me, really qualified people say to me, well, why didn't I get the job? Well, you didn't get the job for one of any number of reasons. At the end of the day, the hiring manager decided that, I don't know, they weren't comfortable with you, or they didn't like the way you did this, or who knows? There are a million reasons. But if you're telling me that Elena Kagan made a conscious decision to only hire white men, no.
And that's the issue. That's the issue. I don't believe it was conscious. The power of racism is not conscious racism, it's subconscious racism, where you think that you've done the right thing and you've been as fair as you can be, and it just so happens that Every single black person that's ever interviewed in front of you is not qualified. At that point, maybe you have to say, maybe there's a bias here. If I'm picking the smartest people in the room, and every person I pick is half male, half female, and every person I pick happens to be a man, I have to accept the fact that maybe I'm not as perfect as I think I am. Maybe I'm not as fair as I want to believe that I am. Maybe I'm judging them based on some criteria that's naturally biased toward men. Maybe I think taller people are smarter. Maybe I think that you're smarter if you like football, right? There's that cultural overlay that I think ultimately causes this subconscious racism to come to the forefront.
I don't believe that. I've been in hiring situations where the hiring manager, and sometimes when I embark upon a senior search, I get all the specifications, I get all the criteria, all the requirements on paper, and then I will privately say to the hiring manager, now tell me what you really want. Now tell me what you really want. And sometimes they'll be forthcoming and they'll tell me, and it moves the process along a lot further. It's interesting to me when a hiring manager will say to me, look, all right, you're asking, so let me tell you. I don't want a woman in this job. I want a man. Good. Okay. I'm glad you told me that. I'll usually ask, because I'm curious, just help me understand why exactly is that? He will say to me, because my client base, they're not going to respect a woman in this job. The people that this person is going to have to call on, they don't want to see a woman. They want to see a big, strong guy that they can go out drinking with at the end of the day. Or they'll say to me, we've had problems with women on the job that, between needing to take maternity leave and picking the kids up from school. I just don't want it. I don't want it. I just don't want it. And that's enough. That's enough. I appreciate a hiring manager saying to me, I don't want to hire a woman. I get that. I understand why they don't want to hire a woman. And even though I could show them very well qualified women, at the end of the day, he simply doesn't want to hire that. Thank you for telling me that up front. Let us spare ourselves unnecessary whatever moving forward. Again, I'm going to give Elena Kagan the benefit of the doubt. She hired the best people for the job based on what she knew she needed. The fact that it turned out to be mostly white men, so it did. I don't know. I don't think that she made a conscious choice of saying, I don't want a black person. Maybe she simply did not evaluate the qualities or qualifications of the black people who applied for the job as being as good as the people she hired. I'm willing to say that, and you have not given me any compelling reason to think otherwise. The fact that you think differently, well, that's not enough.
Well, I say the data speaks for itself. That I'm not speculating on who she is or what she thinks. I'm speculating on the data, and the data is pretty strong. But let's move on. We had a list of topics we wanted to hit, and I think what we should do is hit one more and then kind of save the rest for next time so people can digest what we're talking about today, because we've given them so much to deal with. I can imagine
argue about voice. There's so much to argue.
I know, right. I can imagine the angry comments. I can't wait to see those. Now, last thing I want to ask you about is the President of the United States, Barack Obama, gave his State of the Union address. Some people loved it, some people didn't. Everything in between. What were your thoughts about the State of the Union?
I didn't love it. I never really loved the State of the Union address. What I love about the State of the Union is the ritual of it, the heraldry of it, the announcement, Mr. Speaker, the President. I love that. The drama of it, the theater of it, I absolutely love. I don't love the politics of it. I certainly didn't love what the president had to say last night. Didn't love it, not one bit. I found him to be smug last night. I didn't care for that. I think that much of what he was saying was pandering to his base. None of it's going to be actionable. So it felt like it was sort of a 2-hour waste of time, honestly. But the only thing worse than that was the Republican rebuttal, which was just so unbelievably terrible. It was hard to sit through it. It was as terrible as all that. So, it makes me wonder about the value of State of the Union addresses. I understand that it's something that is constitutionally required. Although, interestingly, and I know this from watching West Wing, and I trust Aaron Sorkin to do his research so I don't have to, the State of the Union does not have to be given every year. The way the Constitution is written, it says, literally, from time to time, the president will report on the State of the Union. It's not required every year. And I think we have come to the point, and maybe we've just become so cynical, or we have become such a politicized population. The State of the Union never feels to me like it's actually a State of the Union. When was the last State of the Union address where the president said anything other than the State of the Union is strong?
Well, first of all, I'll say that I think where we certainly align is that we can't stand most politicians. I know I can't. I think that what they do in Washington and on Capitol Hill it's almost completely disconnected from what the people want now, right? And I think that's one of the things that if our country struggles in the future, that'll be part of the reason why we have politicians that just don't do what the people want anymore, in my opinion. But the other, as far as the State of the Union, I will say, first of all, speaking specifically about Obama, I'm to the point where Obama kind of bores me. I don't think that he is, all the hope and change and the enthusiasm people had years ago, it's kind of gone. There was literally a time, Susan, for about 2.5, maybe 3 years, where after Obama was elected, where if you said one critical word about the president in the black community, you were going to be just tarred and feathered and beaten in public. I mean, people would literally attack you as if you had criticized their relative. And it wasn't you didn't just get attacked for saying things that were critical. You would be attacked for saying things that were not optimistic, for not giving him applause, saying things that were neutral. For example, I think I referred to him as Barack Obama, and I got a long, nasty message from someone who said, he is the president. You need to refer to him as President Obama, right? So it was kind of ridiculous. And here's the funny thing, though. Now, I could go on my Facebook page, and I could say, I'm really disappointed in the Obama presidency and what I've seen over the last 7 years. What is this, 2015? 7 years. I wish he'd done a better job. I'll get crickets. I'll either get crickets or I'll get agreement. And then every now and then, 1 out of every 5 people will say, "How dare you attack our president? You're mean. You're just jealous." So that was another funny thing. People thought people would accuse any public black person who critiqued the president of being jealous of him, which I thought was very strange. But but now I think a lot of people are just kind of like either they're in the black community, they either have serious issues with Obama and the lack of progress, or they are just sort of silently supporting him, just saying, we like you because you're the first black president and we're proud of that. But we can't really defend you because you haven't really given us a whole lot to work with. We don't have anything. We don't have any stats or data or policies to really go into these arguments with. You're leaving us with no ammunition. So we're just going to be silent about it.
We're writing it out. We're all writing it out. We are all writing it out until something better comes along in 2016. I was reading. Did you read Black Prophetic Fire? Did you read Cornel West's newest book, Black Prophetic Fire?
I have not read it yet, but I do plan to read that.
It's something you have to read, and he takes Barack Obama to task. He says this prophetic viewpoint is not a personal attack on a black president, rather it's a wholesale indictment of a system led by a complicitous black president. So Cornel West, who you and I both love, for different reasons. I love him because he's Princeton, class of 80, because my son took his, freshman seminar. I love Brother West. I think he's, smart. He's funny. He's passionate. I love that. But he's had it with President Obama. He knows that your people have been sold out by this president, but I feel like my people have been sold out by this president. I've been very disappointed in President Obama and his administration. I think that the country will do well in another year and a half, 2 years, when we're on the way to a different administration. I will say, because it's only fair, that the nation goes in cycles, and I think President Obama caught a bad wave. I think he came into office at a bad time. But it's been an awful 6.5 years for everyone I know. what an awful 6.5 years it's been, and I will forever remember that it was under the administration of President Barack Obama. Everybody lost their jobs. Everybody lost their money. My marriage fell apart. Everybody's gonna relate to President Obama for every awful thing that happened during this 8-year period. It's the luck of the draw. It's the luck of the draw, baby. That's it. The luck of the draw.
Well, God bless him, and
God bless
I hope that maybe things will get better toward the end. And at the very least, one of the things I think is really important, and I think we can close on this note, a point of unity is that as divided as we become as a country, as much as everyone kind of has their issues and their little factions, I think it's very important for us to understand, though, that we have the privilege of peace in our country. We have the privilege of knowing that we can go back and forth and have fights and get on Facebook and call each other names and get mad at our politicians, and there's not very much bloodshed. Because remember, that's a privilege. That's not a right. I mean, there are countries around the world where people are getting, hacked up and blown up and shot up because of political differences. So I think that that's important to keep in mind as we decide, how happy we are with our politicians. So I think that's important.
Without a doubt. No, I completely agree. Have you been reading some of the comments that our viewers have been sharing? I know that you don't read comments. I read comments all the time. And maybe when we next talk, we could address some of the comments by some of our viewers, some of our listeners. I wish they were a little nicer. I wish they were a little more generous. I wish they, liked my curly hair better than they do. But all right, whatever. Whatever.
The subscribers on the channel, they're gonna say what they want to say, and I encourage them to be honest as you and I are. But I agree with you. I agree. I mean, if you're gonna come with something mean, at least back up what you're saying with some logic, maybe some facts. Don't just be nasty. And we will hit those comments next time. I actually have this other thing I got to do, which actually started a couple minutes ago. So I'm gonna run, but.
Important. Busy Mr. Important. He has so many things on his
so important. You see this is an important tie, Susan.
No, I think you look very sincere today. You look very sincere today, boys. That's good.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm honored to have the time of such an important woman, and I want everybody. Every time we do one of these segments, I'm going to mention your book. Your book is called Marry Smart. Is that correct?
It is called Marry Smart. Our viewers can follow me on Twitter at the Princeton Mom. Twitter, the Princeton Mom. Love to hear from them.
Awesome. Yes. So everybody, please go look up Susan. Pay attention to some of her ideas. They're good ideas. And I'm glad to have Susan as my friend. So check her out. And me, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins, and some of you may know that. I don't know. But thank you very much for your time, Susan. I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure being with you and your listeners, Dr. Boyce.
Yes, and the pleasure is all mine. And thank you all for checking us out at yourblackworld.com. And also, this is our segment called This Week in Black and White. And we're going to keep doing this. We're going to really, really push forward on this and hit some hard issues and have some awkward conversations, but have some fun in the process and learn a few things too. So I hope you'll stay with us in that journey. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.